This is KTVO's Good Morning Heartland.
And welcome back. One of the keys to maintaining the quality of grasslands is through the use of fire. Fire can be a big help when you use it under the right conditions. And with warmer weather on our doorstep, many of you will be burning overgrown grass on your land to help maintain it. But do you know the do's and don'ts when it comes to successfully burning your own prescribed fire? Well, we have John Murphy, a local private land conservationist with the Missouri Department of Conservation, here this morning to break it all down for us. How are you doing?
I'm well. Well,
thanks for coming on to the show. And with the warmer weather upon us, a lot of people will be, maintaining their grasslands by prescribed fire. So quickly, let our viewers know that aren't aware of what a prescribed fire really is.
Well, a fire is a prescribed fire, or another term that we interchange a lot is a controlled burn. When the person who's lighting it has control of it and is using it, has an outcome in mind. Often, and it is a wildfire once it escapes that person's parameters of control.
Okay.
So once that person does not have control of it any longer, then it becomes a wildfire. But prescribed fire is a valuable management tool and historically shaped our landscape in North Missouri.
Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the do's when it comes to doing your own prescribed fire. What are the do's that we should follow?
Well, I'd say number one, foremost, is educate yourself about burning. Okay, there's a lot of instances where a little bit of education about weather patterns, about fuels, and that type of thing can go a long way in how to prep for the burn.
Okay.
Number two, have excellent fire breaks.
What is this?
Okay, a fire break is from which you are going to light fire from.
Okay.
Okay, so and outside of a nuclear event, nothing is going to burn dirt. So if you can get your fire break down to bare dirt, that's the best possible scenario. A simple mowed line will not suffice unless it's like a putting green on a golf course.
Okay.
You have to reduce the fuel. Number three, very, very important, call the proper authorities before you decide to burn. It's a valuable resource to have, rural fire departments, and when we make unnecessary runs, that's a taxing situation on equipment and personnel. Number four, have the necessary manpower. Come up with enough help to be able to control and be able to sustain fire, and so it doesn't become a wildfire, so you have it within those parameters. Next is pick a good wind direction and use a lot of backfire. Pick a wind direction where it's going to carry your smoke away from sensitive areas like highways, blacktop roads, your neighbors that are going to get smoked out, wind direction, and use a lot of backfire, which is fire backing into the wind, which is more controllable.
Okay.
Than one where you just light it and it runs away from you.
Right.
Okay, so use the fire where it's backing into the wind. And lastly, one of the do's, and these are just some cursory things, but mop up the scene well.
Okay.
If you have smoldering debris next to your fire break, we don't want to get called out there later on that night. So if you have burning logs, embers, that type of thing, make sure you're raking them into the black, mop up the scene well, make sure things are extinguished along the fire break.
All right. Now let's talk about the don'ts.
Okay. Well, again, there's several, but I was just trying to, for time's sake, pick the highlights. One good rule of thumb, this is related to natural cover fires. I want to couch it by saying this. This has to do with natural cover, which is grasses, logs, wood, that type of thing, brush. So don't burn with a relative humidity that's going to be less than 30%. It says more, but we're going to have it less.
Okay.
Once relative humidity gets less than 30%, natural cover fires become very difficult to control. Okay? And don't burn with winds greater than 15 miles per hour. So when you're watching the weather in the morning and you say we're going to have 22 mile an hour, 25 mile an hour wind
Not the best day to do that.
Not a good time.
All right.
Again, I want to reemphasize another don't forget to call it in. So if you call in, a lot of our counties in North Missouri have enhanced 911 service, so you're calling one number that's in charge of law enforcement and fire response. Let them know what's going on, so because when you put up smoke in the air, that catches attention.
It
so
does.
when folks call it in, we have an idea of what's going on the landscape. Thirdly, don't leave the fire unattended. This kind of goes along with mop up. Don't light the fire and go to town and have coffee. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you are on scene until that fire is what we would call cold, or it is in a safe condition. Next step, is do not skimp on the fire breaks.
Yeah.
I really want to emphasize the fire break thing, because if you just take a bush hog around your grasses once or twice, you still have fuel in those fire breaks that can creep across. And then lastly, on the don't assume anything about fire behavior. Many times I have heard folks that have had wildfires say, well, it's just going to go out to that ditch, or it's just going to go do this, and it's going to go out.
Right.
Or when I started the fire, I had this wind direction, and then all of a sudden the wind picked up and shifted directions on it. This is a situation in which you can kind of get cavalier about fire behavior, and you can't assume that everything is going to go just like you think it's going to go.
And it never ever, sometimes, like you said, the wind direction changes or it picks up and everything like that. So really quickly before we run out of time is why is it important to follow these do's and don'ts? Because they actually fall into regulations here in Missouri.
Yeah, and as it relates, I can speak to Missouri's situation. We have laws in place which for agricultural purposes and land management purposes, landowners are allowed to conduct prescribed burns. However, there are instances where you are legally responsible for what happens with that burn, whether it's the smoke or the fire. So there are different categories of if it's a misdemeanor, or if it gets away from you and destroys property, you have legal responsibility about that. This is not just something it's a fire I have no control of. So there are laws in place to allow landowners to use this tool, but also if you are negligent in your burning, there are laws in place to hold you accountable.
Well, very good information, and a lot of information that a lot of people need to know and follow. And what we'll do is we'll post all of this information on our website at heartlandconnection.com, as well as the Missouri Department of Conservation's website and information as well. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. And we'll be right back.